Hello, everybody, and welcome again to Procrastinator's Pit Stop. We have another amazing guest lined up for you today. It is Nikki May, and for the past 4 years, Nikki has specialized in social media and digital marketing, focusing exclusively on small businesses. Through extensive research into social media trends and digital consumer behavior, she has become a recognized expert in the field. In 2023, Nikki launched SocialBluePrint, a company dedicated to helping entrepreneurs create purposeful content that drives measurable results and builds a strong online presence. She has successfully worked with businesses across various industries. Nikki, welcome to the show.
Hey, Chris. I'm so excited to be here and just talk about all things social media.
Yeah, and we're excited to have you. But before we dive into it, we do have a little bit of an icebreaker question here for you. And the question for today is, what is the most interesting place that you've traveled to in the last 6 months, and what made it so memorable?
All right. So I'm actually a huge traveler. I actually have a travel influencing account. So I travel all the time. And my favorite in the last 6 months has been Guatemala. I went to Guatemala for 3 weeks and I went by myself as a solo traveler. I absolutely loved it. It was my first international trip that was solo. And so I got to stay in hostels, and I stayed in a dorm room that had 12 beds. So I was sleeping in there with 11 other, mostly solo travelers as well. And it was really cool because you connect really fast because everyone's by themselves. And I also spent 2 of those weeks taking Spanish lessons so that I could communicate with the locals there. And I just want to be fluent in Spanish in general. So I honestly had such a blast. Everyone traveling there was great, and everyone that I met living there, I stayed with a host family too. Phenomenal. So it was just the best time.
Yeah. Guatemala is, they said it was really been pretty nice. Spent a lot of time in Central America myself. You got plans to go further south or no?
Yeah, I honestly would visit everywhere. I have a map on my living room wall, and every time I go somewhere, I put a pin in that country's location. I would go just about anywhere. There are very few countries that I am not willing to go into. But right now, I've primarily just done Central America. And so I would love to go even further south and hit, honestly, every country in Central America.
That's interesting. Okay, let's dive into it. So, Nikki, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and the journey that brought you to where you are today?
Sure. So I got into social media not really planning to do this for my career. So I actually worked in operations management before I made the switch. And I really only switched because it was the only job I was able to get when I started traveling full time. So I traveled the US full time for about 4.5 years, and that meant I needed a remote job. There was one in social media. It was 5 hours a week. It was so low, but it was the first one that I could get. And so I took it. And rather than mess up this company's account that I had just taken on when I really didn't have any knowledge in social media, and this was a small business, I just started my own Instagram account that was based on traveling. So I would share what I was doing, where I was going, and it grew into this community of almost 10,000 followers just on Instagram alone. I think it's, I don't know, 12,000 across the board, but I don't post too much elsewhere outside of Instagram. But I learned a lot from basically the influencing route and working with brands in that respect. And then I tried to take everything I learned and use it for this small business that had trusted me with no experience to really help grow their account. And I, in that process, learned there is a huge difference between the influencing side of social media and the business side of social media. The strategies are different, the goals are different, right? And so then I started taking kind of this combination of how to grow, but also how to get this business clients and sales. And I started working with a lot of different other businesses to make a full time job. So then I actually had, 40 hours that I was working, I had this travel influencing that I was doing. And when I settled down after 4.5 years, that's when I decided to launch my own company, so that I could just take everything that I learned and just really start working for myself.
Well, that certainly sounds like an interesting journey there. What were some of the challenges that you faced trying to set that up besides, learn?
Of setting up my business.
Yes.
Yeah. Really, It was easier than I thought. And I don't mean easier necessarily just like starting a business is easy, right? Like we know that there is so much that goes into it. I did a ton of research. I mean, for probably 6 months before I launched, I was reading books, I was listening to podcasts, I was just trying to figure it out because while I knew the social media side and how to do that, I didn't know everything else behind the scenes. And so I probably spend 50% of my time still trying to figure things out. Like taxes and all these weird other paperwork things that come up that you just didn't expect and figuring out how to, pay people and have a team, that's all new to me. And so the biggest challenge was probably knowing that I loved social media and I launched this company so I could work more just in social media where I wanted to. But then I found out that someone also has to handle the back end of this business. And I've started to actually love doing that too. So I've brought on social media managers to my team to manage my clients' accounts. And I'm actually kind of starting to get out of the implementation of it and more just into working on growing my business rather than working in it.
Okay, so you've learned the fine art of delegating then.
I am trying really hard. I find that it's so much more difficult. So when I was in operations management, I managed a team of 15 and I had no problem delegating at that point. It wasn't my company, but like this needed to get done and I couldn't do it, but I already had these other people I was managing and I would just say, okay, you do this, you do this, you do this. But with my business, I have the hardest time just letting somebody else take over something because what if it's not done how I would have done it? And I'm starting to come around and realize that actually the people that you bring on, I mean, you should trust. Otherwise, they shouldn't be on your team. And they have a completely different way of thinking about things. And that brings so much to the table. So, really, just kind of giving them that leeway, but then also just kind of double checking that things are getting done that I would want to get done, even if it's a little bit differently, has really, really helped us grow.
Yeah, it is different when it's not your company and sort of breaking into that as well. So how do you manage your day-to-day activities? Is there anything that you recommend in terms of like an app or a routine that you get into to help manage everything?
Yeah, this is a really great question because I have struggled with this probably since I launched the company. I am very easily distracted within my business. And so if I'm working on editing a client's videos and then a different client texts me a question, that distracts me. I'll answer them and then I'll see something else while I'm answering that text. And I think, oh my gosh, I forgot I had to do that today. And I'll go and do that. And I'll forget that I was editing those videos until 2 hours later. And then I come back to it. So I have been trying a few different strategies. My most recent one has been time blocking. I am really trying to just say, from 9 to 10, I am working on the automation processes of my business, trying to figure out how to get things more automated and scalable. And then for these 2 hours, I work for this client. For these two, I work for this client. For these 30 minutes, I follow up with my team. And then for the remainder, I can do whatever is kind of left over, whatever I couldn't get done. That has worked pretty well for me. It helps reduce anxiety of looking at my to-do list and saying, oh my gosh, today is going to be crazy. Because I actually do give myself a break. If I blocked 2 hours for a client and I get everything done in time, I will actually use the remaining 10, 20 minutes to just kind of take a breather and try to not overwhelm myself before I move on to the next one. So that's been pretty helpful. For project management, I use Asana. I don't know if you're familiar with it. It's pretty common, but that's what I use for my day to day. I also use that for my client portals for the accounts that I manage. So they all have their access to their own Asana board. It's where I keep all of their content ideas. It's where they upload their content for me. And it's also they can see kind of the strategy that's going on behind the scenes and where their content is at. So am I editing it right now? Am I captioning it? Is it completely scheduled and ready to go? So they can kind of keep up to date on stuff like that. And we communicate through Asana a lot. Every task just has comments and threads underneath it of let's change this. I don't like this. This is wonderful. It's good to go. And so everything's kind of in one spot. And that's basically it. Yeah, time blocking in Asana. And I'm still figuring out how to do it all. I have a really hard time taking a break. I'm not going to lie. So
Right.
I feel like if I have time to sit down and watch a show, I should be doing something in my business. And I think that that's detrimental because then I just get so overwhelmed, not like I'm not able to just kind of sit down and relax. So we're still working on that.
Okay. Well, you did say that you use time blocking, so you haven't tried to schedule in your breaks then?
I have not. I try to be done by 7 p.m. every night. I try to stop at that point. And I start working around 9 or 10. It kind of just depends on if I have a lot of meetings or if things are a bit crazy. But like that's a long day, you know? And so I really do try to stop at 7. It's only if, I had a day packed of meetings, but I still have to get client information out or proposals that day, like it's time sensitive. I might go a little bit past, but I'm getting better at it. It's just if I stop at 7 and I sit down and I watch a show, then I think, well, what now? Like I could be doing something that's potentially going to grow my business. So why wouldn't I do that instead? And I also love my job. I love working. And so that's kind of what I want to be doing, but I'm trying to retrain myself out of that.
And just in building the business, what's been the thing that you love the most aside from?
That is a great question. I love the connections I've made. I think that's probably number one. I think that as a small business owner, if you are not networking and meeting other small business owners, not even in your niche, just other small business owners, you're missing out on such a great community. I co work probably every other week with this group of other women, small business owners, and we have a blast. We are connecting each other with all these different people. We are just giving each other free advice. What have we learned? What is a terrible idea? I was looking for an accounting company and I got a recommendation from them. Instead of having to Google, I could just ask this one person who actually used the same as another person, and they gave me great feedback and I trust them. So that the community and them understanding that it's overwhelming and it's so hard, but it's so worth it is really nice. It's those like-minded people that just kind of build you up and fill that cup when you're just maybe full of anxiety because it is your business. And if it fails, it's on you. And if you don't make money, it's also kind of on you, but you know that you can't really make money from the start. It's going to take time and a lot of effort. And just having that community around you is really, really important.
Yes, community is definitely really important. I know that a lot of that has gone away. Actually, that sort of leads me to my next sort of segue. So when we talk about social media does provide like a lot of distraction, and it also can be a little bit difficult to know kind of what you have to do and when you have to do it. So how do you sort of balance that in your work when you're dealing with these small businesses? Do you make a plan for the content for them or the kinds of content so that it gets the message across, or how do you do that?
Yeah, so I uh, do everything from just content calendars. Some businesses just prefer that, or they're not yet at a place in their business where they can afford a full social media manager and they just need help with that content. So rather than them scrolling, for hours upon end, and like you said, getting distracted by something, I do all of that for them. I do keyword research for them. I do competitor analysis, trend forecasting, and I put together a calendar for them with inspiration. So I might say, I saw this TikTok video. I want you to do something similar. So I always say, do not ever copy. You should not be saying what somebody else is doing. If you are doing a lip sync, I don't want you to put the same words on the screen. That's not what we're doing. What we're doing is saying, this is an interesting concept that worked really well for this person. Let's change it for your company, but use a similar structure. So maybe it's a storytelling about topics X, Y, and Z, right? So we're not copying theirs because everyone's story is different. But I like how this girl laid it out, or this company really brought this issue to light. Let's try to do something similar for your own. So I take that off their plate. That is kind of the base level for social media management that I'll do for companies. And then as they grow and have a bigger budget, then they start offloading more things to me. So maybe now I'm editing their videos, now I'm scheduling it, now I'm doing their engagement to help them grow faster. So it just kind of depends. But what I think is really interesting is that for me, since I work in social media, that is not what I do in my free time. Like my daily screen time average is probably lower than most people's because I don't want to scroll on social media in my free time. I want to get off of it. I love it for my job, but when that's what you're doing for 40 hours a week, that's not fun. It's not something that takes your brain off of it. So that's something that's a little bit interesting. I had actually reached out to kind of my community of other social media managers out there and said, I want to do a collab about our daily average screen time. And all of them responded and said, I don't know if I'm the right person for this because my daily average is about 3 hours. And so is mine. Mine is about 3 hours, 30 minutes. All of theirs are so low compared to like my husband. He's a nurse. He's on his phone all the time because that's what he does for a distraction. That's his decompression thing, but it's not ours, right? So I think that's kind of interesting too, is that I think it distracts people maybe not working in this industry. And so for me, when I take that over for somebody, it's taking hours off of their plate because now they don't need to get on social media to scroll and scroll and scroll. I've got it for them and I know what I'm doing and I can do it faster.
Okay. And what would you say to somebody, to a small business? I mean, you just, outlined how important it is to have, your local connections in your local community. How important is it to have that local sort of network before you go into social media, or do you build those in tandem?
Yeah, I think it really depends. I've always been a fan of in-person community. I think it is just so important to people. And while it's great to have this kind of like social media community and people who really care about maybe what you're posting, it's the people that care about you that really, really help. And so I did mine in tandem. I started posting about my company and kind of growing that community. And at the same time, I joined networking groups and in person networking events in my area. And so they're not the same. It's not the same people. Although now the people I've met in person tend to follow my business, I also get to see them in person. And it's just a different feeling. It's a different form of community versus the people who you meet online. I always say that there's no one that supports your online business more than that random person that you have never met, but you message every day. And I don't know, 30 of those people. We don't know each other, but it weirdly feels like we do. And we hype each other up so much. And that's really helpful in my business, and in their business. It's great. And it helps us grow collectively faster. But I think you got to have both. I think it just helps ease everything when you just have a community for both of them.
And if you had to distill all your wisdom about social media into maybe one sort of leading step that a small business could take, what would it be?
Stop posting sales content. That's what I would say. Your content should not appear like a TV ad. It should not be something that people see and say, it's an ad, swipe. You want to disguise your ads under humor and relatability so that people want to watch your content. So, number one piece of advice, stop posting promotional salesy content unless you can do it in a funny and relatable way.
Funny you should mention that. So that kind of brings me to another point here. There's so many companies out there and so many people that are resorting to using AI to write their posts and schedule and put that out there. What's that actually doing for their account? And is it, harmful? Is it good?
Yeah, super big topic right now. And I get asked all the time if I think the rise of AI is going to take my job. And it is an emphatic no. No. I think AI is a wonderful tool. I think it can cut down on the tasks that you're getting blocked with. The writer's block is a real thing. Writing captions is really, really hard for some people. I totally get that. And AI can definitely help you get there. But I think it's a starting point. And like I said, I think it's a tool. So it's not like you have somebody else who knows what they're doing. AI is not an expert in social media. So you saying write a caption, it's going to give you something, but it's probably not going to lead to as many conversions as if you had trusted an expert to do it for you. So when it comes to captions, there's a few rules. One, most people don't read it. Most people, if they're on the Reels page, don't even know how to access the caption, which that surprised me. I'm a caption reader. So it was very interesting that I would post something, and if I ever said more details in the caption, so many people would say, where is the information? Where is the information? How do I get this? And I'm like, it's right there, buddy. And they didn't know. So when you use AI for captions or for anything, for content ideas, you just have to know that it's not an expert. So you need to look at what it's giving you, and then you need to put your personal or branded touch on it. And you need to know your brand voice. So if your brand voice is like Scrub Daddy, they are a playful, kind of inappropriate, and pretty snarky. Wendy's is very sassy. They're known for that. And it's great marketing because you can see a post by Scrub Daddy or by Wendy's and know exactly who it's coming from without the name or really the picture of who it is coming from, just because it's very uniquely them. And so when you're getting something from AI, you can say, write a caption about, let me think of an example. So what kind of content should a business owner be posting, right? And I'm going to try to figure out what to say. AI is going to spit out something that is so robotic. And funnily enough, it kind of uses the same words for everybody. So I can tell when somebody has used AI and has not changed it, but it's not relatable because you are speaking to humans. You are not posting for robots. You're not posting for the algorithm. At least you shouldn't be. That is another good point. Stop posting for the algorithm, post for your people. But when you say something that says, are you worried about people not seeing your stories? With these 3 tips, you can, I don't know, you can attract that target audience and leverage your social media, right? It's like, okay, great, but it's boring. Versus if you were to come at it and say, hey, business owners, I see you struggling. I know how annoying it is to keep posting and feeling like nothing is going to happen. Here are 3 tips that worked for me to grow to over 12,000 followers across all my accounts, and I promise it's going to work for you too. You're personalizing something. You're making people feel understood, feel heard. So when they see it, they think, this is me. This girl knows what I'm going through. She's gone through the same thing. A robot cannot give you that feeling. And a huge part of marketing is invoking a feeling. And it doesn't have to be good. You can invoke anger. You can invoke rage at an injustice, right? But you have to give that feeling, and a robot just doesn't have that. So that is my take on it.
Okay. You mentioned the algorithm and a couple of different points in there. So when you say that you're posting for the algorithm, what do you mean by that?
Oh man, this is a hot topic for me because I find it very annoying when people do this. So I don't know if you or any listeners have seen the 1 second trend it was really big on Instagram, where people would just upload a 1 second video that was basically them blinking or them looking at something. And it's 1 second. So it loops and loops and loops, and then you put a lot of text on the screen. So then people are reading this. And because it loops so much, the algorithm is thinking what they think. The algorithm thinks this is an interesting video because people are watching it over and over and over. But really, all you've done is fake it, and you've annoyed your audience because nobody likes to be tricked into anything. And that's what this is. And it's the same thing where if you upload a 3 second video and you say, we'll stick with the content things, 3 types of content your business should be posting. And that's it. And you don't put anything in the video. You just say, read the caption. I think that is so scammy because if you're going to upload a video, make it a video with stuff in it, like stop trying to scam it. Stop trying to make people or make the algorithm think people really like it, because you have no idea if people really like the content now because you're posting for the algorithm. Versus if I did a talking one just like this to the camera and I said 3 types of content your business should be creating, right? Awareness, nurture, or interest content, and then sales and promotional. 3 different kinds, right? I said that in a video. And then I could also do the same thing, but with B-roll. I could show me creating content, and now the text on the screen says 3 different types of content, and then it lists out the 3 on the screen so people see it. Now, for me, this is an A/B test, right? I can say, do people like when I'm talking to the camera, or do they like the text on the screen with B-roll? Or maybe I try it as a voiceover. So there's a lot of A/B testing that should go on, but it should be testing for your audience, not for the algorithm.
Gotcha. And there's another question that comes up with that too, and it's in regards, well, not really algorithm, but what do you think is more important? I mean, I know that we've talked about a couple different things, and I know in traditional advertising it's a little different too. You've got, followers or like social reach versus like actual growth versus actual like conversions. Where do you sit on that? Like, do you need 100,000 Instagram followers to actually do anything?
Oh, great question. No, you do not. My company one, my business one, I had maybe 212 followers when I made my first $3,000 or something. 212 followers. That's it. That's so low. I mean, I had just started this business, granted, so it's going to grow, a little bit slower, but I made more with my 212 followers than I made with my 10,000 followers on Instagram, and that one took me probably 3 years to get to that level. So absolutely not. You don't need that. What you need is a strategy. When I started my travel one, first off, I talked about it. I had no idea what I was doing. It was just a huge test thing for me. So I made a lot of mistakes, and I learned a lot. But also, my goal for the influencer side is to get a really big following. That's the goal. Brands pay more when you have more people, even if they don't engage. And well, that's a whole different topic about how brands can spot bad influencers from good influencers. But anyway, so for influencers, you're really trying to up that follower count because that is really important for your business. But as a small business owner, it's not about the followers. But I actually think a little bit differently than a lot of other social media marketers out there. So basically, any social media marketer will tell you your followers don't really matter unless they're buying your products or converting to clients, because that's your goal. So no matter how many followers you have, really your goal is just to get them to buy your stuff, right? Very different. But, social proof is a thing. It is a behavioral thing in humans that basically says that person or that business with 10,000 followers, they're doing something right because they have 10,000 followers. They don't know if half those followers are bots, but it's a social proof thing, right? It's why when there's a lot of people standing around looking at something, you're probably pretty curious, right? Because if it's getting all their attention, maybe you should also be paying attention. So I think that having a big following is actually more impactful than people think. The tricky thing with small businesses is how do you get a big following that is actually your target audience and not just a bunch of bots? Because if people are following you that aren't part of your target audience, it's actually going to hurt your engagement. It's going to hurt your reach because they're going to stop interacting with your content. And that's when the algorithm says, well, nobody's interested in what she's posting. So why are we going to show it to anybody?
So that makes a lot of sense. And actually, it raises one question. I know that this has been pretty popular. I don't know if it's still popular, but what I've noticed is that they have this follow, not follow strategy where it's just like I go on Instagram and then I like follow like 5,000 accounts, and
Yep.
it's this race where they're like almost equal for a bit. And then I unfollow everybody because I just don't care. I just wanted them to follow me. Like, what do you say about that?
And you know what? It's effective. That's what I say. It is effective because when you're first starting out and a lot of other people are starting out and you follow like those smaller accounts, they think if they follow you back, then you won't unfollow them. It's just a weird mental thing. So it's effective to grow your following. Okay. Like it is kind of a scammy way to get followers faster. But in the long run, it's gonna hurt you because, like we said, these followers are not your target audience. And when we think about how algorithms work across all social media, they want to keep people on their platform, right? Which means that they are going to promote the content creators and the businesses that are putting out interesting content. Bottom line, that's what it is. Content that keeps people on their platform, that gets shared to their friend and it brings someone's friend back to the platform to see that video. That's what they're looking for. So when you post something, Instagram, TikTok, all of them are going to show it to kind of a lookalike audience or to a core group of your followers. And if they engage with it, then it's going to say, this might be good. And it's going to push it out to a bigger circle. And then if that does well, that's when you start getting that viral content because your core group likes it. This kind of similar group likes it. So now we're going to push it to anybody who could potentially like this. That's how it works. So if you have 5,000 followers who don't really care about you and your content that you're putting out, when you post something and it shows it to that core group that don't care and don't watch it and don't interact with it, then the algorithm says, no, we're not going to push it. And so that's kind of where is it your fault? Like, do you want a big following or do you want to make money? Because for me, I would rather have $10,000 than 10,000 followers. And there are different strategies to get that.
Just speaking to the strategies, are there any small businesses that really don't do well on social media? I mean, I'm thinking like there's different kinds of businesses, right? You've got food industry. I mean, you've worked with just about all of them. Are there any industries that really don't do well on social media?
I would say there are certain industries that it's just harder to do well. But if you have an expert, you can do well. And for instance, I had just talked with a software company. They do they help with bookings. So this could be babysitters, nannies, dental assistants, literally any time that you're just trying to like book something to come in, nail salon appointments. You think about that and it's a little bit tricky at first glance to say they're going to do well on social media because it's software, right? That's harder. And so they were trying and they basically came to me and said, we don't know why it's not working, but we have no engagement. We're getting no followers. We're talking about our content. And the thing is that I know this company and I know that they are really wonderful at what they do. They're great. But when you don't have like a physical product that you can show somebody, you got to start getting creative. And, I said you're missing the storytelling aspect of what you're doing. You should be talking to clients. You should be getting them to tell you why they're sticking with you. And it's not that you're going to go out there and put a testimonial because that has a whole different aspect, but that's not going to help you grow. Somebody saying, this is my favorite software company because X, Y, and Z. What's going to help them is, again, invoking that feeling, right? So the business owner that's overwhelmed because they're trying to do all of these bookings by hand, their business is growing, it's getting too much, they don't know what they're doing. And then suddenly this software company comes into play and now you as a business have so much free time and you have made $500,000 just because it's easier for clients, it's easier to get them in, and it's easier for you so you can go out there and find the clients where before you were just stuck trying to manage everything. It's the storytelling that comes into it. So I wouldn't say there's any company that can't be on social, but I would just say it's more challenging, specifically for service companies and for software companies.
Gotcha. And the reason I ask too is that I know that just in doing a little bit of research between companies, I know that there are certain social media companies out there, won't name names, but there are certain ones out there where if you go through their little intake form, you say what kind of business you are, they say that, flavor of the month is not available. I think they were like personal brands, coaching, life insurance agents. Those are just ones off the top of my head. So you don't have any businesses that you would say kind of like, no, I'm not going to do that.
So I personally do. For my business, I would say I won't take you on as a client, but that's more client based than I would say industry based. I don't love working with MLMs personally. So I would probably reject that. But then also what I found is, like I said, it's not really the industry, but it's the person. So as a small business owner, if you come to me and you say, I really need help, I don't have any time to produce any content, I need you to take everything off my plate and shoot all the videos and take all the photos, I'm going to tell you no, because that's not a social media manager. You're asking for a videographer, a photographer, and a social media manager all into one role. That is, first off, you're not going to get the best results because as a social media manager, I am not a professional photographer. I am not a professional videographer. Can I fill those roles? Yes. But again, this is where that expertise comes in, where that's not my expertise. And you should have somebody else filling those roles, and then I can do the back end. And a lot of people get that confused and they think that if you're a social media manager, you're actually a full marketing team, which is just not the case. There are so many aspects in marketing. You have paid ads, you have, the SEO, the websites, I mean, anything like that, right? And so I don't do that. So I would say no to the ones who are expecting me to do all the work and to not put in any, because that's not the point of my business. I typically work with small businesses for the owners, or if they have a small team that want to be involved in their content. Like they want to be the face of their company. They're excited about social media and what it can do for their business versus somebody who says, I don't want to have anything to do with it. I just want you to do everything. There are other firms out there and agencies that can do that, but mine is just not one of them.
Okay. So it sounds like you've had quite a lot of success with your business and you're on a really great path. Where do you see yourself in the next year?
And I actually haven't mapped that out. I have kind of thought in 5 years, I know where I want to be, but in a year, I kind of, I guess I would say, assume from all the other small business owners that I've met that it takes about 2 to 5 years of you just working so hard and almost feeling like you're never going to get ahead before things kind of level out. And I'm kind of just mentally preparing myself for that. But I do know that in the future, I don't want to be stuck inside my business. I don't want to feel like I can't continue to travel or I can't do X, Y, and Z. I want to know that I have a fantastic team underneath me who are wonderful at their jobs, who care a lot about what they're doing, and that I'm taking care of. So for my team, I don't ask them to work any specific hours. They basically have clients they manage. And as long as that is getting done and it's getting done well, that's great. So I'm going to pay them the same, whether it takes them 2 hours to do something or 10 hours to do something, just because they can be really fast at what they're doing, and I'm not going to punish them because they didn't work 40 hours in a week. If they can do it faster, that's wonderful. And I kind of want the same for myself. I want to, we talked about this, get more into the growth phase where I'm on the outside and thinking, what can I do differently? How can I creatively market myself that we haven't been doing? What's a different stream I can get into versus me just trying to keep up with the day to day?
And so just as we're sort of starting to wrap things up here, has there been anything that we didn't discuss or maybe something that you felt I should have asked you and maybe we didn't touch on today?
Great question. I think we touched on some really important ones, making content for people, not for the algorithm, using your creativity. I guess that's kind of what I would touch on more of is that if you're using different tools or you're bringing people onto your team as a small business, what it should be doing is freeing up your time so that you can be an even better you, whatever that looks like, right? So I never thought I was creative. I knew I was an entrepreneur from the time I was in second grade when I started gluing puffballs together and calling them creatures and selling them for 25 cents. Like I've always been doing whatever it took like that. But I never would have said I was very creative because I started getting into spreadsheets and data analytics. And that's still one of my favorite parts of this job is going in at the end of the month and saying this content performed better, this one was terrible. Let's make more of the good stuff. Um, and so when I started bringing on team members in AI, I realized that I was creative and I could think of some really great things in this field that I just didn't even know I could do because I was so bogged down in the day to day of thinking about this, and this, which we talked about delegating. Once I started delegating that stuff, I started being better at my job. And so I would really encourage people that when you start delegating or when you start using different tools to make your life easier, um, think about how you can become even better. So don't try to just give yourself more day-to-day stuff because now you've delegated something else. Try to think about what can you do that nobody else can do. And really that's where that brainstorming and the creativity comes into it, is what is like authentically.
Okay. Well, that's some major nuggets just dropped right there. And lastly, before we go, how can our listeners reach out to you? And what's the best way to get in touch?
Yeah, so Instagram is my platform of choice. That is just at Social Blueprint LLC, and that's the username for everything, Social Blueprint LLC, and that is also my website. So they can reach out to me on any of that. I am very active on all of them. If they shoot me a message, if they comment, because this is my career and I love it, I'm gonna comment right back. I'm gonna start that conversation with you. And I'm happy to help any small business owner or person who wants to start working in social media. I'm happy to give them tips and try to help them feel a little bit less overwhelmed, because I know that it's just an overwhelming thing, especially when you're trying to do everything else for your business.
Well, thank you once again, Nikki, for being on the show today. And to all our listeners, thank you for tuning in once again. And don't forget to tune in again next time for your source for information and tips to keep productive, maintain your motivation, keep on being inspired. If you can't find that motivation or inspiration today, then be that motivation or inspiration for someone else. And until next time.